How important do you think streaks are in life? So like you have this running streak, almost 3,000 days. I subscribe to like running almost 3,000, right? You're like 2,700. I mean, we're almost speaking in years now. It's been so long, Tim.
Well, it is because if you're talking about my run streak, then that started, I'm coming up on my birthday.
What other streak do you have?
Dude, you don't even want to know. You just don't even, I'm starting to shed streaks because it weighs too much mentally in my head when I'm trying to sleep at night. Like, did I do this? Did I do this? Did I not do that? And I'll wake up at like 3 in the morning. And then you're like, why did you send me an email at 3 in the morning? It's terrible.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. But you have that rower machine. You don't do streaks on that, right?
Dude, no, I made the conscious decision, man, that this is not another streak that I can start. I do. I do it. I do it 3 or 4 days a week. I have a meter goal that I have. So depending on if I'm getting after it, then I can do it in 3 rows. Sometimes I need the 4th, but.
How many streaks do you think you actually have? Because to me, I'm learning about this today. I have one. I'm learning this from you today. Like I thought you only had one. So this is very interesting.
Yeah.
Dozens?
I have it. No. I have at least 3.
Okay. Well,
and then, no. Yeah. I mean,
do they stack on each other? Like, do they have anything to do with each other?
Well, one is one is running. Yeah. So I guess the other one that stacks on it is my Apple Watch closing rings thing. I mean, I'm at 2,495 days in a row for that. Today was 2,000.
Well, what are the things on that? Isn't it just running?
It's your standing hours, your exercise minutes, and your total calories burned. But the problem with that, man, is that they just keep on ratcheting it up. So like, oh, you know, I mean, so like, and then there's monthly challenges and all that stuff, dude. Matter of fact, now that you mentioned this, Zach, we are in June now. Last month in May was the first month that I didn't do a half marathon, and probably it's been a long time. Like, I don't know.
I did a half marathon 3 months straight this year. Then I got to April, didn't do one. Got to May, didn't do one. Now we're in June, not going to do one. So you know what? We're starting a new streak called the No Half Marathon Streaks.
It's but therein lies the issue. It's like, for me, once I break that streak, then it just keeps on going. And
it becomes the wrong way, right?
The wrong way, correct.
I do think streaks are important. I think that everyone should have at least one streak to go by, whatever that thing be, because I think it gives you something to do, right? And so maybe it's, I remember even like with the show, like it was like, okay, get 10 downloads a day, right? And so that's always the goal, get 10 downloads a day. And people are like, well, that's not enough. Well, you know what? If you can get 10 downloads a day, I don't know what 10 times 365 is, but it seems like that's 3,600.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because
something a day.
I don't remember when you started running, and I was like, dude, soon enough, your long runs will become your regular runs. And so like when we started this podcast, this is very similar. It was like, whoa, we hit 10 downloads this day. And, so what once was the high water mark now becomes like really disappointing if that's the number that we get. So incrementally, we continue to climb up the charts, and the show just continues to gain traction, but it's hard.
I'm not sure what the correct terminology is on this, but you just said it. It's like figuring out that thing that used to be hard becomes the norm, becomes easy. Like everything in life gets better the more repetition you do, right? The more compounding interest of that thing that you do, and it's. Maybe that's the word, reps. Maybe it's compound interest. I feel like if 2022 is the year of a word, it's repetition. I feel like that's the word that comes up.
I've used it a lot.
Every single day. Just like trying to pronounce someone's last name. Dennis Perreault, how are you?
Dennis.
I'm doing great. You got
What's happened? Man, so early in the day, Zach's already got a win under his belt. Life is good.
I made the bed today. I didn't really make the bed, but some people say if you make the bed, that's the best for. I think that's ridiculous, but whatever.
Supposed to start the day that way. General Stanley McChrystal, make your bed.
Well, thank you, General Stanley McChrystal, for.
I think it was him.
That's a book, right? He actually made a book about it, or wrote a book about it, I believe.
I don't think that's the title, but that is one of his taglines, I think.
Yeah.
Dennis, do I know you?
Yeah, we met down at some of the pitch events down in Virginia Beach. I want to say 2.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been a little bit.
What How pitch event was that?
Say again.
What pitch event was that?
That was the practice sessions ramping up to Start Peninsula.
Got it.
The end of year competition. So that's when I was trying to just kind of see what was going on in the startup scene after moving back from Northern Virginia, and been trying to stay plugged in ever since. And that now I'm trying to leverage the community and the amazing support ecosystem that we have here.
Tell us about what it is that you're doing. Love to hear about the idea that's swimming around your head that you're trying to kick off.
Yes, for sure. I'm a 23 years military veteran, Navy right out of high school, and then Air National Guard for almost 14 years, and now I'm Air Force reservist. But most of that time I've spent in the, I guess you could call it the intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance realm. So collecting information and transforming that information into decision quality support. So kind of dabbled for a while, explored different things. I've always been entrepreneurial minded ever since watching my dad kind of run a couple businesses out of the house when I was a kid. So finally stumbled into the idea of becoming a commercial drone pilot. Got my own drone and did some side jobs over the past year or two. Launched that as a result of my master's program with the University of Maryland, which was a master's in technology entrepreneurship. And I figured I'm not just going to study entrepreneurship. I want to do it. So I'll use the program to actually launch a business and get something real going instead of just papers and projects. So I'm at the point now where I don't really just want to have a side hustle or a lifestyle business. I see a lot of demand for translating the things I've done and supported in the military around information. It's super important for what we're trying to do with industry, with remote sensing, using either satellites or drones, the expansion of the drone market. There's just an amazing range of data sources that people can get access to in the remote sensing realm, and a lot of applications for it. So I've selected agriculture because of a lot of the parallels as essentially a beachhead market where drones are ripe for exploitation in that industry. Remote sensing from space is improving, and there's a lot of the same challenges that the military is trying to overcome that agriculture needs to overcome, which is how do I decide what to use? How do I make it decision ready so a farmer doesn't have to know anything about how the data is getting to him? It's just information and decision ready information. So that's Pixelar's aimed at that intersection of remote sensing, imagery, and focused on the agriculture industry as the first space to move into.
Interesting.
So,
go ahead.
One of the things that I probably first learned 2012 timeframe, there was a company at the time, it was called TugCam, and you might remember this, Tim. Yeah. Then they rebranded to GMES, which then I think they're now Nataris. Rebrandings is ridiculous, but they saw from a camera perspective, not drones, it would be smart for a barge, a tugboat, to have a camera on the end of it instead of people walkie-talking back and forth to each other. What's interesting is that oftentimes the founder, who may have some sort of experience in that world, that doesn't always equate to that business or the businesses that would be leveraging that service, if you will, getting them to actually pull the trigger and buying that service. So what's interesting is I hear similar things in what you're doing to what they were doing. And their biggest challenge, and probably still to this day, is getting those people, getting those businesses, getting those construction sites, those tug cams, those barges to actually start using the thing that makes a lot more sense. How are you getting these industries that have done it the exact same way? I'm saying that as a novice in this world, to actually start to use and capitalize on it, because sometimes things that make sense have really, really difficult times of adoption. And what are you doing to try to combat that?
No, yeah, that's a really good point, because part of one of the parallels that I see between the military, government in general, and agriculture is that there's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of, I guess you could call it sunk cost, and to convert your operational equipment on a farm to be precision agriculture ready, to disperse water or fertilizer exactly where it's needed. That you have to continue to tech refresh and replace equipment, and that is slow in an industry like agriculture. It just very similar to the way DoD is often 5 to 10 years behind commercial industry with adoption of technology. What I'll say is that the Pixelar is not the first to try to address this data triage and support problem for agriculture. There's the satellite companies like Planet and Earth observation systems, Black Sky. They're already trying to tailor their imagery support to agriculture, and then drones are starting to move into the agriculture space. We get drone up here that the agriculture missions is one of the mission sets within their platform that you can do, and there's multiple other pilot networks that do agriculture missions. But the demand is now shifting because of what we're seeing with the costs in the input costs, is what farmers call it, with herbicides, pesticides, fuel, and most importantly right now fertilizer and nitrogen. The costs are like more than double what they were just a year ago, partly because of COVID, supply chains, tariffs because of what's going on with Russia versus Ukraine. So the input costs are essentially a plague on farmers right now, and everything they can do to bring those input costs down, referred to as precision agriculture, apply it only where needed and when needed instead of generally all the time everywhere. They need information to make those decisions, and remote sensing from space and I think increasingly from drones is helping them get the information they need about their crop status, so they can apply selectively and save a significant amount of input costs.
Is there currently infrastructure in space that you can tap into and leverage?
Yes, definitely. Yep. So Planet has probably one of the leading providers. So they operate constellations of satellites, and they just put, I think they have like almost 130 now, and they just they're putting up 6 to 8 more, I think is what I heard, that are going to be better spectral detection. So instead of collecting in like 4 bands of the light spectrum, they're collecting in 8. And that gives them a better ability to detect non-visible, so infrared, and that's part of the spectrum. They call it near red edge, where you can that's where you can get some really good detections of the health of a crop. So yeah, the technology's there. It's the same challenge that we face everywhere, where the data is becoming more and more available, and some of the costs are going down, but the technical hurdle to tailor that in a way that makes it easy for farmers to use, so they don't have to become a imagery analyst or a data scientist in any way to make use of it. That is the change that's happening right now, not just in agriculture but multiple industries.
How fast are they pinging those cameras, or how often?
So Planet likes to highlight that they can image the entire Earth every day with their entire constellation. EOS or Earth observation system, I think they are less frequent than that, but basically you can depending on cloud cover and some variables, you can pretty much get your crop imaged almost every day. And then not what we want to help do is not just deliver imagery to a farmer, but just the detections that they care about, so that they can go confirm and validate what the detection is telling them might be a problem, and then make a decision off of that. And as they build trust in what those detections are telling them, then they'll start to make decisions before, personally driving out there or walking out there to validate. That's the trust phase that the industry is in right now, the adoption and then developing trust in what those detections are telling them.
I'm curious if the overall median age of farmers today, is that getting younger? And with younger farmers, are they more likely to adopt new technology?
I think the average farmer age, if I remember correctly, is still 52 or 56, I think is the number that I saw just last week. So still, I guess you could say not the emerging generation, but the prior generation. I think the market dynamics and these cost factors, which are going to last beyond just this year, are going to drive a lot of that change and a lot of that pursuit of adoption of these services. But the newer generation, so you wouldn't think that a lot of farmers would be on tools like Instagram, but there are a lot of farmers that have Instagram profiles, Facebook profiles, and they're trying to learn from other people. And really, that is kind of the network where the best practices and the technology adoption is going to, I think, permeate. So I think it is that younger generation, my age or a little bit younger, that is going to really drive this adoption.
It's farming today, to me, it's becoming really interesting. Especially like if you, for example, you get a lot of people that are really upset about all of the different solar farms that are going in, all the wind turbines that are going in, and people get really, really bent out of shape about this. They're like, man, I can't stand when I see this stuff. It just makes me so aggravated. When the reality of it is, it's like, this is the farmer's land, and the farmer makes more money leasing those solar, that space for solar farms and wind turbines than they would if they were producing crops. So it's just, it's just these people can get upset, but it's the farmer's decision, and it's the farmer's land to do whatever they want with it. But it's just fascinating that, to me, that the farmers now are facing these decisions on what to do, especially as you said, with fertilizer costs being as high as they are. I mean, it's just really tough to turn a profit now on agriculture.
Yeah, and so one of the other markets that you could say is kind of layered on top of agriculture is the carbon market. So there's a lot of movement afoot with farmers essentially being paid for their sustainable agricultural approaches to provide credits into that market that other businesses can essentially purchase. I don't know how converting a field over to a solar field instead of a crop field factors into that or not. But I think there's one of the things that I kind of am seeing. I guess maybe it's a hypothesis, maybe it's a vision, but I kind of view what's happening with agriculture right now as it's becoming a technology industry, not just a machine run industry. And whether it's data analytics, autonomy, autonomous drone systems, which is something I'm looking into right now, because I think that is one of the ways that drone service adoption for crop scouting is going to emerge. Farmers are going to, in a lot of ways, become technologists in ways that we traditionally didn't think about them as. And you could almost foresee a time when farmers are not just storing, their fuel and their, fertilizers and their grain, but they're also storing data with their own data hub to support their own local analytics because of lack of connectivity. I see you with your SpaceX T-shirt. At some point, a lot of these inland farms they're probably, if they're not already, going to start buying, Starlink so that they can have high connectivity, so that they can get their data in and out. there's a big transformation wave, I think, that's happening with agriculture, and that's a part of the transformation I'm trying to support and become a part of.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. Zach, if you're not aware, or in the audience, just the whole carbon credit program is really, really interesting. And it's almost kind of a mess just in terms of accountability and how they track. So if you have a company that produces a lot of carbon, a lot of pollutants, what they can do then is they can buy these credits so if somebody plants X amount of trees, somebody puts up renewable energy, they buy those credits to then offset the carbon that they're putting into the air. And so that's how a lot of these companies then strive to become carbon neutral. And it's just, so there's a lot of questions right now in terms of like what's counted, what's double counted, are things being double, triple counted? I mean, it's just, it's really interesting. But yeah, that's where the farmers are able to generate additional revenues is through this, through the carbon buyback credit program. It's interesting.
Yeah, I have been fascinated with, there's a lot of ads around that. Like, well, by 2030, 2040, we'll be carbon, whatever. We'll just get carbon neutral. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I've done zero studying into this. But when I think about, not studying, researching into this, but, when I think about some of the companies that you're seeing these advertisements for, these commercials from, you're like, well, they got pretty big plants that are in pretty big warehouses. This will be interesting to see how they do some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I also, it and nothing to do with carbon, I don't think, but like there's a lot of food industry too that talking about being, I can't remember what their terminology is too, but talking about how long it's going to take for them to kind of, I guess, change the life cycle of the stuff that they've been doing forever. And I think Panera might have been one of the first companies that did this, but I think their stuff was like by 2025 we're going to be whatever their terminology was, and that was interesting. And then you hear stuff like the Mac Shack that's like 15 years from that, which is really interesting. Mac Shack is McDonald's, the home of the Big Mac. How long it's going to take for something like that to come to fruition. It's just interesting to look at that kind of stuff and to see. So Dennis, let's say that you're you approach a farmer. What's the pitch to them? What are you selling to them? How do you get them to come on board and get them to adopt?
So basically the general pitch is that the crop monitoring services should be as simple as picking up your phone and scrolling, social media. You should get alerts, check the alerts, and if you want to verify the information that it's telling you, you can actually look at the actual imagery that the detection is coming from. But part of what I want to do, like I mentioned, there's other players already supporting this space with crop detection, especially with space sensors. I think what I'm seeing is that it's more data centric than it is people centric, and I want to put people back in the center of the equation and make it more personable and approachable, which is basically that background in the military has all been about translating intelligence information or sensor information into what does this actually mean to me. So that the customer really eventually of what we want to build is probably going to be agronomists, which are essentially analysts and consultants for farmers, because that person becomes the trusted advisor to a network of farmers and farms. And it's that person-to-person dialogue that we're essentially going to be informing. But it'll be web-based, mobile app, human-centric, so discussions and chat and collaboration around what the detections are saying. And then another aspect is the ability to task or ask for additional sensing or support from either an advisor or a network of people, or requesting drone pilots to come and do localized high resolution crop scouting to verify what lower resolution satellites are saying. So, but yeah, it's all about putting something in the hand of a farmer that doesn't just give them data, but connects them to the people who can tell them what that data means, and go from there and try to. I see that same use case, that same essentially digital support consulting across a range of industries. So farming is, I think, one of the most ripe, and in high needs, but that same relationship is needed in other areas.
There's a consumer-based app out there. There's a consumer-based solution out there called Sunday Lawn, and a little bit of the things that you're talking about seem similar to me. So if you go to are you familiar with Sunday?
I'm not.
Okay, so the typical use case, I think, for the standard American homeowner is you go to Home Depot, you buy some stuff for your, you buy some seeds for your lawn, you put it down, you water it, whatever. Sunday does all that stuff, but they take a picture from the satellite. They say, this is your lawn. We think that this is what your lawn is. But what's interesting is they still make you send in a piece of soil to them to analyze. What is it again? What's the difference between kind of the soil that is from my lawn compared to the farmer that an image is going to do differently from your aspect of it? Because in their case, they're telling you, hey, these are the things that you need to do to the actual soil, to the lawn, to whatever. It seems similar, again, novice in this world, to when a farmer would need. They would want them to look at the soil, the actual crop, whatever. What does an aerial image do that's different than actually going and expecting the actual crop and touching and all that jazz?
Yep. So that's where the relationship between satellite imaging and drone imaging, I think, comes in, because from space, you may know that there's a problem in an area of a crop. But with a drone, especially a drone flying what's called a multispectral camera that collects in multiple bands. So there's like the Phantom 4, they just put out a multispectral sensor drone that collects in, it uses 6 different cameras, and it measures some of that infrared and other areas of the spectrum. But that spectrum measurement, especially high resolution with a drone, you can now start to measure even gases that are emitting from the soil. And that can tell you things about what's going on in the soil. If you're flying low enough, you can actually start to use computer vision to detect pests. If they're on top of the crops, you can easily spot some of those things, or at least the evidence of pests. But that multispectral, and then there's hyperspectral, is where you can really start to measure the signatures of specific things that are on the soil, on the crops, or like I said, gases being emitted from the soil. Farmers are still going to need the soil detections, and there are companies out there that are building sensors that you essentially can leave out in your soil to measure things like water retention and some of those other things. You can still do sampling to identify, do essentially DNA testing of the living organisms that are in the soil to know whether or not that profile is helpful or harmful to what you're trying to grow. What farmers are starting to do, like I said earlier, that becoming essentially a digital industry, they want to collect all of the sensor data, but not manually have to integrate it. So they have farm management platforms that they're using to bring all that data together and view it essentially geospatially in a map. And then some farmers may understand all that stuff well enough to make all the decisions on their own. Some may work with an agronomist or ag service provider to help determine what does this mean and what should I do about it. What Pixelar is going to do is help bring in that remote sensing, simplify that remote sensing and drone imagery services and make them more tailored to what that farmer needs for that holistic picture, and then responsive with tasking and requesting additional either satellite imagery, drone imagery, or even you could even request crop scouting by a person if that farmer leverages a team. So there's a lot of different ways that these things will intersect.
But it's interesting to me. I have so many questions that I want to get to, but like in terms of pricing, you're super early. You probably haven't even figured out the pricing aspect of it. But the reason I'm curious about pricing is because this is one of these things where, this being big data, you're gonna have to establish that baseline, and the more you feed the machine, so to speak, the better the results are going to be. So it's like, how do you price this thing in a way so that a farmer's not going to see the same results after 30 days, and then 90 days is going to be way a much clearer picture what to do. And then when you get multiple years, there's even going to be a clearer picture still. It just it's fascinating to me. If you put any thought into, is this going to be a monthly SaaS pricing, or I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, that basically it'll start out with it's a SaaS model with additional fees on top of that for by request things. So essentially you can get a baseline set of data layers, from some of the satellite detection information, which is essentially the table stakes for anybody that's trying to provide this type of support. But then that ability to request additional satellite collection beyond that baseline, or submit a request that then gets brokered to some of the drone pilot networks and platforms to task a drone pilot. Those will be by request costs. So that I'm still going to work out what that pricing model will look like, what the supply and demand, especially when you start looking at rural areas where there's not going to be a lot of drone pilots. There's going to be a lot of variability in that cost based off supply.
Sure. I mean, I would think that like one of the biggest areas, other than like just overall crop health, but another area that would be really, really beneficial to the farmer would be these day-by-day updates or predictive analysis in terms of, because when the crops are all ready to be harvested, that has to happen really, really quick. So then you can gear, especially now with labor being so challenging, that you can help the farmer predict when these crops need to be picked and harvested, so that one, you're not picking too early, two, you're not picking too late. And then if you pick too late, that's just as bad as being early, because they're just literally dying on the vine, so to speak. So I think that would be a huge, huge advantage. What other areas are you looking at in terms of a list of services that you can provide to the farmers?
So there's a growing and vibrant data ecosystem, I'll say, around agriculture. So even companies like Microsoft, so with their Azure platform, they have a Farm Beats service that they provide that is essentially Azure tailored to agriculture. So essentially your own data platform around the agriculture data needs. So there's different options. They're not the only one. LandDB is another provider that does something very similar. Really, it amounts to part of what Pixelar will be doing, even just to fully launch what we're trying to build, is deciding which of these are complementary, which are competitive, and looking at that essentially value proposition of what does that cost end up looking like, and would farmers get the value out of having that integrated. I'm not trying to build Pixelar to be the all-in-one agriculture, farm management platform. There are plenty of other great providers for that. We want to partner with those so that we can help simplify the remote sensing aspects and that tasking aspect to bring that data in more timely, better tailored to the needs of particular farmers, and simplify that request to data delivery cycle that they're going to need. Beyond agriculture, we just talked about solar farms. You got to monitor the solar panels, and drone pilots do a lot of those missions now. I think when we have a lot more autonomous drone systems, especially like I said in rural areas, you're not going to. It may be more cost effective to have your own semi-autonomous system that essentially just sits outside of a barn or a facility and just can fly a mission on schedule whenever you want it. There's a couple of companies that are building those types of drones. I think that is probably something new that's going to enter the agriculture space, but that could support security, that could support infrastructure, that could support solar. And so when you bring autonomy in, the tasking needs to, it's not scheduled, the tasking needs to be handled. So if it's on request, based off of a satellite image that gives you a potential detection or potential issue, that's the handoff that Pixelar is going to try to help handle. Do
you have a specific crop set that you want to start with? Or have you identified what would be the easiest, or are you going to start with the most difficult?
So I'm going to focus conveniently on Virginia. Virginia, we have 43,000 farms in Virginia. there's plenty of space here within a day's drive for me to kind of start local. People I can actually go meet. Farmers are a very personable crowd. They like to build trust and have relationships before they buy things. So we have a lot of soybeans in Virginia. I went out and visited the Virginia Tech Agriculture Research Extension Center out in Warsaw, Virginia, up in the Upper Peninsula. They do a lot of research on soybean, different types of soybean, seeds, how they do in the soil, and they also do some drone detection research. So after seeing what they were doing, I was like, yeah, this is actually pretty. Drone support to agriculture is riper than I thought it was a year ago when I first went out there and visited them. So I think soybeans, corn is probably pretty, in demand for these types of services just because of how significant, how important that crop is.
You are admittedly super early into this game. When do you start making decisions, put pen on paper, start legit making these things happen so that it's not just theory or hypothesis, that you actually start making it happen? What's it going to take for you to start kind of making those next decisions?
Yeah, I'm pretty close. So like I said earlier, I was looking at a couple different providers for the data services, and then the commercial satellite providers, Skywatch, EOS, even Planet. They provide almost out of the box ready tools that you can use to build a platform. So I'm basically down selecting right now which ones I'm going to leverage, but it's like within weeks I could have a Pixelar branded product ready to go, where I can build upon that the unique parts that I'm trying to add, which is that tasking, that human-centric collaboration around what's being delivered to the agronomist or the farmer. So that's part of why I'm here in 757 Startup Studios, is to get the help of a team of great people here and a network of entrepreneurs to kind of wayfind the shortest path through delivering something that provides value. And then from there, it's just iterating by learning, what is in demand, what are they buying, where do the problems exist, what are the pain points that I can pivot to better address.
Being in that the startup studio, you say that you're looking for something there. All the people in there are also going through the same problem as you, though, I would assume, where they're super early on. They're not, this is your first business, even though you've been around your dad, right? Is that your dad's business?
Yep. Yeah, this is my first time launching a business. Like I said, for a couple of years, it was just commercial, drone pilot on the side jobs, relatively easy to do. Now that this is my first time trying to actually build a software service
How do you sift through the education that they provide them? How do you sift through and making sure that education's great. I get it. You even said it yourself. I don't just want to have an MBA or whatever it was from University of Maryland, which, by the way, I think they just won the lacrosse national championship. So go Terps.
Well, now we're talking about lacrosse. Past couple of weeks, it was football.
Exactly. Football's the real love. But anyway, education's great. You can read a ton of books. I mean, you even just admitted, I don't just want to be a guy that knows this stuff. I want to implement it. Right. And so how are you going to sift through all of the knowledge and education and the conversations that you go through and sit through and be at, when all reality, the most important thing is going and talking to those farmers or whoever ends up being your paying customer? Like, what do you envision getting out of a program like that?
It's multifaceted. So now, like I said, I did the technology entrepreneurship masters, which in a lot of ways was kind of like a 2-year business incubator. It was sequential in that way that if you did start with a business idea, you could leave with a business launched, which is what I did. So I've done a lot of training on the side with the lean startup method, and I actually went through the ICAP program in 2020. After I finished my degree, I was like, well, let me refine this. So the ICAP program, more lean startup methodology, customer discovery. And so I did a lot of that as well during that time. What I'm trying to get out of this is the fine tuning of the business model, so that I know what to build that provides something at a cost benefit formula that makes sense for this target market of agriculture. So I've only been here a couple of days, and I've already used a couple of folks as a sounding board for some ideas around how to adopt some low code methods to putting some things together. Some technical folks in the room. There's a couple of young guys that are starting a drone manufacturing company, and they were great to talk through a couple of things about drone sensors. So there's some of that organic conversation that's going to be great. The advice around marketing, building and defining a business model, knowing your numbers before you try to go seek funding. That's the key pieces of help that I'm trying to get from the program, because I want to apply to VIPC to get some pre-seed funding once I have enough evidence to justify that. The other thing I'm doing is I applied to a new incubator around ag tech called Ag Launch. They do a virtual catalyst program, and their whole focus is connecting early adopter farmers with entrepreneurs that are trying to explore ideas, so that you can get that direct feedback from a farmer. So I'm waiting to see if I was selected for that later, actually this month in June. And that will give me a good sprint forward on some of that customer discovery. But like you said, my next step is to go walk around, talk to actual farmers, meet with some agronomists, and see how they are adopting some of these services and what their challenges are with tailoring that data and delivering it in a way that makes it easy for a farmer to make decisions with it.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you. I mean, taking some of these more direct questions, and they're certainly directed towards you. However, I mean, for other people that are listening, I mean, these are things that they need to be thinking about. And so to hear them, they're listening to us ask you these questions, and then they're able to hear your response. That's really, really beneficial to the listeners. So I appreciate you being a good sport, and helping out the listeners, especially being on the podcast now. It's all evergreen material that people can go back, and Andrew's probably timestamping this in terms of so that, hey, these are the things you need to think about. Get out there and stop wasting time. So appreciate that.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I was excited to come on, is because I'm early enough, but I'm leveraging the resources in the 757, and I'm starting to see how that's going to help me navigate these next 6 to 9 months, hitting some initial milestones, and that is hearing that part of the story is something I didn't hear a lot on a lot of other podcasts. Usually, you're hearing about people who are getting their Series A and hearing their story about getting through Series A. That earlier part of the journey where there's more uncertainty, you're still trying to refine not just your story, but your understanding of a business model and the immediate go-dos to actually launch. I'm excited to be going through this journey, and after seeing what this program offers, I can see that not every start. Obviously, entrepreneurship is an uphill battle, and few actually succeed. But if you leverage the resources to the full extent that are available, even in the East Coast, not in Silicon Valley, but you can be successful. You just have to make smart decisions with the right information.
Well, and that as well. And Zach and I have talked about this a lot. It's the people that do well, the people that succeed more than the others, are the ones that answer the door of opportunity when it knocks. Not everyone has the courage to come on the show, expose themselves, so to speak, or their business at such a young stage, but it's super important because you're able to get feedback. And the other thing that's really important is that everyone in the audience is they want to help. And you're showcasing, hey, these are the things that I haven't figured out yet. And so they listen to the show and they can, hey, Dennis, man, I have expertise in this. How can I help? You could find potential customers. I mean, there's a whole array of things that you'll get as a result of doing the show. So, I mean, kudos to you.
Well, and I think one of the reasons why it's so important to start actually doing instead of theorizing is because people can just keep it in their head. They can talk to the wrong people and think they're moving forward when they're not, right? I mean, the platform that you're going through right now, I've done for the last 15 years. So like, I get it. And when people are like, oh, this is what I want to do, I go, just go talk to someone. Like go talk to the person who you think is actually your customer and see what happens. Here's what I think is going to happen in that situation, because I've done that 15 times before. And then I think it's interesting where people are like, no, that's not going to happen. And so I remember there was a company that was trying to sell ammunition in a like a Uber kind of way or a marketplace kind of way. And they were like, oh, we're gonna sell this at or we're gonna let people know when they can get ammo at because I guess I don't own a gun or bullets, so I don't know this very well. But like, if you're at Walmart or Dick's or wherever and you're buying it, I guess it goes off the shelf very often. So they wanted to have a platform where you could figure out where it was. And I was like, here's the problem with what you guys are proposing is you're expecting that store number 434 in Cheyenne, Wyoming is going to communicate with you guys. And what I learned through Cary, Norfolk, which is just 12 restaurants on Granby Street, is it's very difficult for them to tell you that there are 86 hush puppies or fries, and you have a one-on-one relationship with those 12 restaurants. What makes you think that Dick's Sporting Goods store 433 in Cheyenne, Wyoming is going to communicate with you? And it was interesting. 3 months later, they're like, you're right. They're not going to communicate with us. And I was like, but that's why you need to go talk to those people, so that you can't just theorize these things, you actually do it. And I think what happens, myself included, Tim, I'm sure, has done this a billion times as well, maybe a million, because I fail billions more than
if you're not
Tim.
failing, you're not trying hard enough.
Sure, but you have to like go talk to the real people. I know it's difficult, it's scary, whatever. If you're not willing to do that, just don't start a business. It's that simple, right? And figure out what they say. And a lot of times, most of the time they're gonna disagree with your theory. But if you are nice to them, they might say, hey, here's where our real problem is. And they might actually open up the checkbook right then and there. Do people still write checks? I don't know. And then you have a real option there. And so it's don't just do the research, actually talk to people. And I'm not saying that you're not doing these things. Clearly you are, but you got to get out there and see what's going to happen.
Yep. Yeah. That's the stage I'm in. I've done a lot of the broader, research. I understand, kind of the global indicators for where the smart agriculture industry is going. Stats like 70% of it could be benefited or is leveraging some form of remote sensing for monitoring crop detection. I can see that the broad waves or the broad brushstrokes. Now this is getting the pencil out and using the tip of the pencil to refine what those, especially with a minimum viable product that can deliver a service that someone will pay for. What does that actually look like? And you're not going to figure that out unless you talk to people who are the ones that are trying to decide, will this actually help me save 10 to 15% on my nitrogen costs? And can you convince me that it will?
Can I ask you something? Sorry, Tim. Let me ask you something about like big business, agriculture, like people losing money or spending away money because of fertilizer, things like this. Like, I feel like MVP has gotten very buzzwordy. People are super hyped into it, whatever. I don't think that every business is interested in prototype style things. I don't think that every industry is interested in MVP style of things. So how are you going to address that when this is like literally people's livelihoods in something like an MVP, and the service could or couldn't completely wipe out what they've done? How are you going to handle that type of thing in the MVP style of vernacular, if you will?
Yeah, obviously the easy answer to that is creating a free version that gives you just general the initial level of information that is very low cost. But I'm not as big an advocate of the freemium approach, but meeting them where they're at. So that's why identifying the who are the early adopter farmers that are tech aware and data aware, and then meeting them where they're at is basically delivering something that either can be integrated into a tool that they're already using for farm management, whatever platform they're using, or something as easy as a mobile app that they download that they can check as easy as someone can check their Instagram feed. It's actually surprising how simple you can make the delivery of some of this information, and that simplicity is what I think will be a differentiating on design instead of data to some extent. I don't need to give you 1,000 data sets. If I just give you the right data in a very simple way that takes you 5 minutes to check in the morning with your cup of coffee, that is the easiest path to entry as far as I understand it. And that there's a vibrant ecosystem of players that are increasingly realizing that they need to be more open and not creating silos of data that traps farmers' data in their platform. So I'm looking at some of those companies as potential partners because they're realizing that data brokering, data sharing, collaboration actually builds more value for everybody than creating a stovepipe that may turn a lot of farmers off.
One thing that's really interesting to me is the military background that you have. How long were you sitting on this idea? I mean, or did it take some time? Because you're sitting there, you're at your desk, cube, whatever the case is, and like, are you watching this technology and the use cases over a period of time? Was it a matter of waiting for cost to go down? How long were you? Was this bouncing around in your head before you're like, man, I can't pass up this opportunity?
I would say that, so it was actually during 2020 when I went through the ICAP program, doing 100+ interviews. I was looking at real estate and construction at that time, and then I realized when I saw what Drone Up was doing, I was like, what I'm building is too much like Drone Up, and they're already going to be successful. So I don't want to compete with that type of platform. So it was at that time that I started to look at maybe I want to do something different and better leverage my understanding of the data life cycle in remote sensing. Study of the agriculture market kind of took me back to my childhood a little bit. Riding around on the tractor with my dad and watching my grandfather tend to his couple acre crop farm. I started to think agriculture. What I would love to see is a reverse migration back to farms by people instead of these huge conglomerates taking over everything and family-run farms basically not being able to cut it anymore because of the costs. So I kind of view this as the bigger mission that I'd be supporting with the agriculture sector is helping either family-run farms stay profitable, get profitable, or increase profitability, or people realizing that farming with increased autonomy and automation is easier to actually break into than it used to be, or at least to support from an analyst perspective. So when I started to see those broad strokes, I started to realize that this is not just something I see a potential technical solution for that I'm pretty confident in. It's also connected to like a bigger mission of agriculture as a lifestyle that we too often just kind of forget about. And I would love to be able to live in the hills and have crops, but I don't want to give up 8 hours a day riding a truck and a tractor. But if I can help people who love that job, or help people discover that they would love that job because it's so easy to deal with the data, that sounds like a great outcome that I would have just a small part in supporting.
Yeah, I think that's great.
What's something we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
I think if there's one thing I would end on, any entrepreneur to miss an opportunity for an ask would be a terrible opportunity to miss. The main thing that I want to talk to are people who are facing these data challenges. And if you're a farmer, if you're an agronomist, and you're like, there are a lot of options out there, but it's kind of complicated, and I can't understand what value I get for what I'm paying for. I'm primed and ready for those conversations, and we'll love to explore that. I'm even willing to go back to my childhood roots and spend a day walking around with a farmer, helping out. I'll do whatever they want, just to even observe and get some questions answered. So I'll throw some sweat equity into a farm here in Virginia, easily, on a weekend.
It's funny that you say that. Just because I'm thinking about like clothing, right? And so like so many people are like, oh, you got to dress to success and all that stuff. Like, what do you wear when you show up to a farmer's house or a farmer's location? Like, do you wear the farmer outfit? Like, how do you roll into that?
I mean, just a pair of jeans, not a nice pair of shoes, and a polo or a t-shirt. That's gonna suffice. One of the things that I took away from things that I've heard is that sometimes entrepreneurs will go to pitch farmers, wearing their Silicon Valley best, and farmers are wearing a t-shirt or a polo and some jeans, and yeah, you don't need to impress a farmer with your clothes. You need to impress them with your fascination and what they're trying to do.
Well, they'd probably like, this city boy coming in here thinking he could slick me. That's such a generalization. I'm sorry. But I mean, you can wear, I will allow you to wear the Zack Miller special jeans and a black tee whenever you want. Feel free to do it. That's fine. No fancy shoes here. So don't worry. I don't have any.
I didn't know black t-shirt was the color code for the day. If I had known, I would have put my 757 t-shirt on.
Almost every show, unless I'm wearing a jacket because it's freezing in my house, and then it's whatever color jacket I'm wearing. But yeah,
Dennis, I love what you do. I would love to have the opportunity to check in 6, 9, 12 months from now, just to see what you have found out, and help document this journey, for your benefit, but also to benefit other aspiring entrepreneurs.
Yeah, for sure. I'm refining my key performance indicators here in a little while, and I would love to report back in 6 months that I've exceeded my KPIs, and I'm ready to accelerate.
Yeah, let's book it.
Dennis, it's been great. Enjoy the the black tee jeans lifestyle, and I look forward to 6 months from now as well.
Yeah, take care, guys.
Thanks, Dennis.
Keep up the running.
Every day.
Keep it going, Tim. Keep it going.